What's going on, everybody? Prophecy Wiz back at it with episode 2 of the Prophecy Wiz podcast. Today I have a super special guest, a multiple-time Yu-Gi-Oh! World Champion. He's a Master Duel World Champion, a TCG World Champion. He has more tops than I'm sure he can even count. He's one of the best technical players in the game that you have ever seen. He's innovated a few legendary decks in the game's history. I introduce to you a legend and icon to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Scene, as well as a longtime friend of mine, Ryan Yu. What's going on, man?
Hi, I'm really happy to be here. I'm not sure if I deserve that good of an intro. I don't have that many tops or accomplishments, relatively, but I'm happy to be here. I've known Wiz for maybe it's been 7 years now,
Yeah.
actually. Ever since he got like third at the Niagara YCS with Paleo, that was like still insane. Some of the best feature matches like on the blog. But we actually played at that YCS.
Yeah, you were my only loss to
Yeah.
Swiss.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Happy to be here and chat a bit.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. So, tell me about how you started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Right from the beginning.
Uh, I started when I was like in elementary school. I think just kind of the way that everyone does. I guess you just see the cards or like the show, and then start playing on the playground, not knowing what's going on, and then eventually like, finding out that locals exist, and then slowly going to those, and then just over the years getting more into the game and like competing, figuring out what's going on. Uh, for me, especially, I got into the game with some of you guys might know John or Alec Wilkin. We went to like preschool and elementary school and everything together. So we were always the two of us had like each other as people that were also into it. And we also actually had one more friend that introduced us at first to the game, but then stopped playing. So he's definitely had a huge impact on us through that. But it's been nice having someone always kind of like growing up and progressing as a player alongside.
Yeah, it's awesome. He's been around. I've been friends with him for about similar amount of time that
Yeah,
we've
you
been
also
friends.
played
So
him at your SES, right?
I did.
Earlier
I
on?
actually played him in twice. I played him the last round of Swiss. I think I drew Imperial Order and he just scooped, and then I played him in top 16 as well. So that was actually his first YCS top as well. So that was
Yeah,
neat.
it's crazy that it's been that long, 6 years.
I know it is crazy. It's been a fun journey, but yeah, hopefully you got a fun journey still ahead. So when you first started playing, you and John, were you right away good and you knew like, wow, this is something that I'm clearly better than all my other elementary friends at, or is this something that you like? When did you realize that you were good?
Uh, I think uh, like it's pretty normal, I guess, for people to go through this. Like at first, they like know that they're bad at something, then you start learning more, and then you get to a point where maybe you feel like you know what's going on, but then you realize like, oh, I actually still had no idea what I was doing. Like I never really like when we were super young, like quickly like realized or thought that I was really good at the game. Um, I would say maybe I felt like I started getting better at it around like when I first thought I was like decent at it was like maybe when I was in high school. So like 2018, 2019, like around
Mhm.
that season maybe. But in hindsight, obviously I still was like definitely not close to like what I would consider very good. Uh, and I think it was during the pandemic actually, where everyone was like home playing
Mhm.
DB a lot more often. I would say that's when I really improved more at the game, and like where I think the most significant like time period for my growth as a player was, especially because I got to meet a lot of great people like online when everyone's home,
Mhm.
playing like the LCSs during the pandemic. I got to learn a lot of things from other people and also just like become friends with them. So that was like that's a time that I look back on pretty fondly.
That's interesting because I feel like a lot of people, myself included, thought that they were already like an amazing duelist before then. That's interesting that that's a period of your time that you look back at yourself taking like a really big step in the game. That was you
No,
took.
yeah, it's like the Dunning Kruger curve. If you've heard, I think
Mhm.
that's it. Like if you've heard of it, like where like at first you think you know what you're doing, and then you realize like you don't really know what you're doing, and then you get back up to knowing what you're doing
Yep.
whenever you start like a hobby.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, I think everyone kind of goes through that phase at one point.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely it's definitely an ever growing game too, right? There's a lot of things that like I've created as like principles for myself that I've stuck to for years and then, kind of break out of because if everybody else who's doing well is like on one certain type of thing, it's possible it's worth at least exploring. Like I've been somebody who I've always believed card equality is not a real thing. Like certain cards are just going to be of a much higher impact. Like Nadir Servant is going to be significantly better than any other card right in a voiceless deck. But so like why would I go over 40 cards when I'm like decreasing my chances of drawing that? But how many people have won YCSs with over 40 cards? Like if that's the way, it's worth at least
Yeah,
exploring because then you can hit the numbers of hand trap ratio you need on the hypergeometric calculator, things like that. So it's definitely always like an ever growing game, and that's definitely
yeah.
like a skill of Yu-Gi-Oh in itself and in life is to figure out to be able to accept that like you may have just been wrong. Like that's one
Oh, for
thing
sure.
that's
Yeah,
big in a lot of things. It's just like I almost never lose and think like, man, I bricked. Like there's almost always something that you could have done. Not always, but almost always. So that's definitely I definitely resonate with that. And it's really neat that COVID. I would have never thought that because you were already a world champion at that time. You
I
had
know it was that was like Dragon Duel. I like never really. I don't consider that like super impressive, really.
true, but you were good at a young age, right? Like you did win the world championships at a younger age, and you had YCS tops, right?
No, I actually
Really?
like. My first top was when I got second at Nats in 2022.
That was huge. That
I
was
like
really pulling for you.
I actually struggled to even like make day two at events before. Uh, I'm not really sure. I think also maybe part of it was like just growing up in age and like learning how to handle nerves better.
Hmm.
Is something that helps. Like that's not even necessarily like strictly gameplay related. Uh, and then once I actually topped once that one time,
Hmm.
I think it's kind of just like whether it's like a regional level or like winning a local or like trying to top YCS. I feel like it's just something that once you do it once, it's like a huge mental weight off of your shoulders.
Hmm.
Because I just found it like much easier to top. Like I guess there's just less pressure after you get one and you know you can do it.
Right.
So I just had to get there once.
Yeah, that's awesome. You've taken second now a few times. Is that something that you still have passion to do is win a YCS? Like, do you feel
Oh,
passionate
for
about
sure.
that?
Yeah, I. It's not something where like one thing about Yu-Gi-Oh is like to compete at the highest level in TCG. It's like a lot of people say it's like a job,
Hmm.
and it kind of is in the sense where like the more time you can put into the format and learning and like practicing your technical play, obviously, like if you're going to every event, it gives you a higher chance of becoming a YCS champion, getting a top, whatever your goals are. So it's just something that like at different times, I guess it just feels like more or less of something that I want to invest time and energy into. Because there's always other things, right? Like people don't often talk about that, but there's like school, there's jobs,
Hmm.
there's like even just other hobbies or like not feeling super passionate about the format. You really have to want it, I think. Uh, so while it is something that I would like to do, it's not something that at least like in the last in the last little bit, or I don't foresee myself like ever really traveling to every event, trying to grind and get there. It's more just if it happens one day, it happens. But yeah,
That's
that's kind of
fair.
where I'm at with that right now.
We've already accomplished bigger goals than that, right? You're a world champion in Master Duel, right? This last year. Like, tell me what was that like? Like, what was the feeling of winning worlds? I know it's going to be hard to just like in a podcast say like what it actually felt like outside of like just living it, but like what were your emotions like at that time? Like, what did that feel like?
Uh, I it was just a huge like winning was like a huge just wave of emotions. Like I couldn't stop crying for that like right after and like for the rest of the day. Because it's just uh in a way it's not really the same as winning a TCG event, which is still something I'd like to do at one point. Because Master Duel TCG, like I
Hmm.
almost kind of view them as different games because they're
Hmm.
so different. But winning Master Duel Worlds is obviously something that like after getting second last year, myself, Jesse, and Ray. all worked really hard for it. Like we were spending not just to win the DC Cup to qualify, but also like in the months leading up to Worlds, we were just like trying to test for hours every day. It's just like a lot of that was just like I guess what I was just saying about like you need to put in the time and the work to give yourself the best chance. Like we really tried to do that, and for it to pay off just felt really good.
Yeah, it was crazy. I streamed the entire thing, the entire weekend. I had all of your team's games on. That was super exciting. I was really pulling for you guys because I felt like you guys really deserved it, especially after grinding out. The year after taking second to grind back and take exactly first place in a rematch at nothing less.
Oh
Like that
yeah,
was insane.
it's just like I don't know, like certain things just don't feel like they're real, right? Like that, or like Triff winning the YCS, right? Like
Yeah, that
it's
was
like there's a script
crazy.
writer or something. Yeah,
He was putting in a lot of time and effort though, right before, right? That's seems to be
yeah.
a correlating thing, and that's definitely one of the biggest things. Especially Yu-Gi-Oh really is a like a format dependent
Oh, for
game
sure.
where
Like
it's
whenever
like
the format shifts, you have to learn so many new things.
right, and you have to be putting time into that format. Like even if you were good at one point, like if you come back and like I took some time off during tier format and came back, we had already had a Snake Eye ban list, and I'd never read a Snake Eye card. Like that was like a big learning
Oh,
curve because there was a
yeah.
lot of different decks that happened in that time.
It's like tough because when you when you're like actively playing, even just like going to locals, uh, you don't really need to actively catch up because you're just like maintaining.
Hmm.
But if you take like a break for a couple of months, it's like twice the amount of work that you would have had to do to learn everything than if you were just like steady still playing. And like sometimes, like you said, it ends up with there's certain decks that you're not familiar with. So if
Hmm.
you run into them in tournament, it's like kind of a weak spot in your knowledge. Like I took a few month break last year
Hmm.
during like when Centurion got released. Then the first time I played against Centurion at a tournament, I was just completely like I had no idea what was happening. So stuff like that can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely tough to take a break. Yu-Gi-Oh is such a complex game as it is. It's so there's so deep. You know what I mean? There's so many different parts in the damage stuff. That kind of stuff, right? You remember, but there's so many micro interactions that are just like really important that it definitely is a difficult game to take. Especially if you
Yeah.
want to take it seriously, right? If you want to go to a
Hmm.
lot of events or at least just have like a high aspirations, right? To do
Yeah.
well. So.
Like one thing I kind of think is important that I've like realized is you need to, I guess, find whatever your balance of like wanting to do well, but also being able to invest that much time and like accepting that you can't really expect more than the time you're putting in. So you have to like choose whatever is ultimately most fulfilling to you, right? And like at certain times, if you have like other obligations, obviously that's harder.
Hmm.
So it's kind of just like outside of the game, something that I guess isn't really discussed super often, but it is important. And it's not impossible to like enjoy the game as much, or even like try to compete at the highest level still. But it is just something to consider.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think that that's something for something really important for people to take into consideration. Like honestly, after doing YouTube for the last like 5 or so months, it's definitely something that like I used to look back and be like, how is it that all these people like their livelihoods oftentimes are Yu-Gi-Oh and they're not always the best players in the game, even though we've had multiple like big Yu-Gi tubers now win YCS in the last year, but it's not surprising that like they're putting so much time and effort into videos and things like that it's hard to like just sit down and grind the format. That's
Oh, for sure. Like it at some maybe in some respect, it's like their exposure to the game when making content can be helpful, but it's also not the same as dedicated testing. So that's kind of something you have to add on top. I think is what we've seen. Because like
hmm
it's not like random YouTubers are winning YCSs. It's like the ones that are putting in time to learn the game outside of their content. Like Sam is working like with Pack to learn the UBL deck. I know they
hmm
mentioned that a lot. And like Steven like took a break from making videos for like the better part of a year. Comes
hmm
back, plays just money match on money match on money match
yep.
to learn. Like that's different from his content, right? It's at that point they're not really YouTubers anymore. It's just people who happen to be that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's like a separate endeavor almost, right? It's like they're making like
Mhm.
content for a different thing, but it's yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing. Definitely, Yu-Gi-Oh is definitely which is one of the rewarding things, right? Is like a lot of the time that you put in is oftentimes what you get out of it. If you're grinding infinitely, then you're way more likely to succeed. You know, there's still some variance, but I do think that that there's less variance than people tend to allude to with Yu-Gi-Oh. I do think that a lot of it is just grinding, putting in effort, you know, finding an edge, and
Mhm.
yeah, making sure you're actually putting in the real time. Like you said, like when you won Worlds, like you guys were actively putting in all that time every single day beforehand, testing
Yeah.
that format, unique format too, which is interesting. But like, what you it's interesting because you're somebody that comes up with technical play a lot that like just your in-game technical play has been noted as some of the best in the game, but you've also innovated some of like legendary decks in the game, right? Like you were a big part of that the deck that brought Jesse to Worlds, the Sky Striker deck with the double or nothing, right?
Yeah, I would probably I would agree that kind of I think my greatest strength as a player in the TCG is probably I think I have really sharp technical play, which is something I think I kind of developed during COVID when I was playing a lot of Dueling Book because I know a lot of good players are kind of like resistant to playing Dueling Book because it's not the same as playing in person.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, I've always found it as something that I still can enjoy. And in terms of like improving your technical play, being as sharp as possible, Dueling Book is pretty perfect for that because you get more games in. Like it's faster
Mm-hmm.
than going to locals because
Yep.
you can just be at home, no time in between rounds. So I think Dueling Book has really helped me in that regard. Uh, and like it's like a huge grind. There are some players like Polly, of course, uh, Herman Hansen, like a lot of really good
Mm-hmm.
players. Not like the majority, but some that actively are like grinding DB every format, or at least like at some point when they were more active.
Yep.
And it really shows. Like getting to the high ratings on DB, it doesn't mean everything, in kind of the same way that like having more CS tops doesn't make you good, but it can be something that like is a decent indicator of how prepared you are or how good you are, especially if you're hitting like 1700 or something. Like just to give an arbitrary number that shows
Mm-hmm.
that at least you're putting in all the time to like get that high. So you're getting high volume of games. So of course you're gonna like notice more things when you're playing. But then in terms of deck building, I've never really considered myself like very innovative, actually. I think there are some people who are really good at like technical play and innovation in deck building. Like the best example that comes to my mind is Jesse, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always kind of seen myself more as someone who like plays a normal deck list, but just tries to play it really well. At least like in the past, I think, of course, like when you are playing and just growing over the years as a player, you tend to improve in like most of your aspects. Like I think I've definitely gotten better at deck building, of course. Just it's just with time and
Mm-hmm.
seeing things and learning. Uh, like I think the deck list I'm most proud of actually is the one I played at Niagara recently,
Yeah, the
the Sky
strikers.
Striker one. Yeah, in terms of like innovation, it's nothing special, but I thought it was just like a very well thought out deck for a
Mm-hmm.
deck that doesn't really like have a blueprint. Like it's not like I could look at deck profiles from other people and like try to adopt and adjust the ratios. It kind of just all has to be from scratch because it was just like it's just a tier 5 verb deck. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really proud of that list. I think it's maybe not my strongest suit, but at least something I've improved on. And I've been lucky, like you said with the Utopia deck, the Sky Striker one.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned a lot of things like from working with various players who are better than me. Like Jesse, of course, is like the main example for that, but also like for other decks at other times.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and just like learning from other people who you consider to be better than you at like one aspect of the game, like deck building for me, or like maybe if I'm like helping one of my friends with technical play, right? That's how you both can improve and become like more well rounded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that triggered list was actually insane. I could not even like I was watching it and I'm like, there's no way he's playing pure Sky Striker, but it's not surprising like that it was and like I had to tell my chat because I try to stream 7 days a week. There was like a good month period where I streamed 7 days a week for like 3 or 4 months. Even on the days of like
That's
the
insane.
YCS, like I did a 52-hour stream in that time where it was like no breaks, no like I didn't even like eat for the first like 30 hours, just like straight DB. I was like fifth ranked on DB at the time. I was like 1400 rated. It was just I literally just
No,
I actually played
that's
106
absolutely
matches on
that's
DB at the
crazy.
time. It was it was a grind for sure, but it's what I was explaining to my chat at the time was like when people were like, oh, striker's going up, like that wasn't a striker, like it wasn't like striker's the call. It was like you played striker really crazy. Like striker might have been a good call for that event, but like picking up striker cards isn't specifically wise at that time because like that required you to play that deck insane. Like I don't think almost anybody else would have played striker at that tournament and just had those kind of results. So that was super impressive. That was crazy. It was super cool to see in person, especially a deck that you
Yeah,
liked.
I guess like more what I was. Yeah, exactly. So what I kind of want like would also say about that last is for me, like I know we just talked about like most of the time you need to like be putting in time to learn the format.
Mm-hmm.
But that was like that's kind of an exception. Like that YCS for me was like I did practically zero testing, like just threw the list together in like an hour and then submitted it because I had like midterms that week. And like I showed up to the event not knowing what Azamina cards did.
No
That's
way.
kind of how underprepared. And I'm kind of it was kind of fortunate both that like I don't think the deck was a good call objectively, but it's kind of fortunate that it was the first event of a new format like Rage
Mm-hmm.
of the Abyss. I think typically when you have an event that's the first of a format, people are still figuring things out. It makes it more doable to kind of go in with less prep and kind of like your game fundamentals are more showing than like any prep you do. But it's also a double-edged sword because you could also argue that like the people who did put in time to studying the cards beforehand are at a huge advantage because they know how they work better than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So at least for me, it just happened to work out that I got to like kind of learn what the format and the cards were like as the tournament was progressing, uh, and also a little bit like playing a deck that I liked just for fun, no expectations because I could test. Like it's kind of like a mental advantage because there's just no burden, no stress,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is like very rare to experience for an event. I feel like because if you put in time for something, you're like more invested in the outcome. So
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely a unique experience.
Yeah, Jesse, your teammate had a similar experience right before Worlds too. He won the YCS right before Worlds and said like, I don't really know how this happened. I didn't really test like that crazy for this, but that's yeah sometimes just his
Yeah, it's like it's kind of it can happen. I mean, uh, yeah, like in terms of the whole like needing to be lucky to win an event, I do think it has to be your weekend to win a LCS. I think everyone would agree.
Mhm.
And it's usually however much time you put in is like increasing the odds that if you do get lucky, that you can capitalize, right? That's why like there's so many variations of people saying like for fortune favors the well prepared or something.
Yep, yep.
But there are always like maybe exceptions where like if the format's fresh and everyone's kind of just doing whatever they feel like, then there's
Mhm.
more opportunities to try to get by with less testing. Like I know that's a sentiment shared by some people for sure that they enjoy formats that are like fresher because there's less time to figure everything out. Everyone's kind of freestyling, so in a way it's more fun.
Yeah, I agree. That is super fun. Is when you kind of think you know what you're gonna expect, but you don't really know. Like I would have made the wrong call at California, right? I
Mhm.
would have thought that I knew that the Ryziel deck was going to be really good, but I didn't think that Snake Eye Fire King was going to be so underrepresented. Like it was literally just Paulo top. That
Yeah.
was shocking, honestly. So like that, that was really neat. Like I definitely knew that people were really taking the Ryziel deck seriously, but I still thought that Snake Eye Fire King was really good, and I'm sure it was still really good, but it just the underrepresentation between for Duelist was a bit surprising for that. So that's kind of one of those things where you make a judgment call on what you think is going to be played, and yeah, that's really cool for new formats. I really enjoy that myself. It's always really fun.
Mhm.
It's tough for to justify for me to go to further YCSs though when I feel unsure. Like I might have thought went
Mhm.
to California had it been a 2 month format, because I could have said like here's what I'm gonna play at least likely, and here's the strategy that I have for that. Where it's like if you're not citing something like maybe Dimensional Barrier or Lancia, like that would have been those would have been great calls for that event given the top cut of it. So
Mhm.
that's stuff you would have just had to decide. But um, yeah, the technical play is definitely like a big thing too in those first weekends of the formats, right? Like you being able to play really well with the striker deck definitely was going to be a big help with things like that, right? If Jesse wasn't testing all the time, he's still Jesse. Like he's still put up in infinite time, right? Like I remember when he was playing the Minerva deck. You remember that when he was one of the only people with Minerva and he was playing like Light Sworns?
Like 2016, 2015.
Yeah, like right, like almost even around like Zoo when Zoo came out. I think he started playing Zoo in it, but they're like around that time it was like I had first gotten introduced to him, and I remember like his close friends saying I've never seen somebody who plays even close to the amount that this guy plays, like that he at that time was just putting in more time and effort to the game. I know he's now moved to like more theory and
Absolutely,
stuff,
yeah.
but it's like that doesn't go away, right? Like he's put his time and effort in, so like that the technical play and the things like that are definitely
No,
definitely
yeah, the
matter.
fundamentals are never going to go away. Yeah.
So for Duelist Cup, there's Duelist Cup coming up. And you won two back-to-back Duelist Cups, right?
Yeah, the last one that I played was in March, and then before that, December.
That's actually insane. I feel like that's unheard of. I know like a lot of people were talking about it and just
It's
couldn't even believe that
it's
that
not
was
exactly
real.
how it is.
That's crazy. That's worldwide, right? Like that is incredible to have won. Not only what like to win once is like that's it, unbelievable. To win twice in a row is like this is like what is there, and obviously like there's although this podcast is going to come out after the next Duelist Cup, if that does matter. I know you're already going to Worlds, but is there like something that you think differs you like I'm sure the dueling book time helped. I mean, you're obviously like were a Master Duel finalist. You are now Master Duel World Champion, but what do you think it is? Like, how is it that you were able to win those twice? Like, is it you just grinded way harder, or you have some sort of a better schedule, or how does that happen?
Okay, so like the first thing I want to say is like I want to give credit to I mean I'm sure he's not going to see this, but just I want to give credit to if you like follow National, I'm sure you know who Task is from
Yeah, of
Japan.
course. Yep.
He he absolutely has the better record in the Duelist Cup than me. He's won like five of them, which is absolutely absurd. So I have nothing but respect for him. He's also insane and can do pretty much the same thing. Uh, but I think at least for me, I can't really speak to what his thoughts on the format are. I think I think a lot of people have the misconception that it's just a grind fest and like you're selling your soul. Uh, but it is something where like I sleep like 6 hours a night pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
I like get a decent amount. And you're not like playing 24/7. You're also like taking time to eat or like just chilling and like stop playing, taking a break, or like camping to see like how people's points change.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely not the type of thing where you need to be playing 72 hours, chugging Monster Energy. Like I don't even drink coffee. I just like sleep
Interesting.
normally.
Mm-hmm.
But the most important thing is like just your mental fortitude, I guess. Like you have to
Mm-hmm.
stay calm. In Master Duel, I would say that's like probably my greatest skill, like just staying calm. Because when you're playing for like 3 days, like and you're like, if you're starting to tilt whenever something unlucky happens, like you get maxied one game or something, or you like lose two titles in a row or something, you just really can't let those things get to you,
Mm-hmm.
because then it's going to affect how you play, and then you'll be playing worse. So then you'll start losing games that you're supposed to win, and then when that happens, you're just kind of it's a disaster. So you really just need to stay calm, and it's something that sounds really simple, but it's just I mean it's harder than it sounds, I guess, because otherwise, I mean if it wasn't so hard to do that you wouldn't hear so many people complaining about, oh
Uh-huh.
my god, Master Duel's unplayable. I keep getting maxi. I lost like 10 dials in a row. Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to stay calm just for the duration and play as well as you can. Like just to share an anecdote, I once went like 3 and 25. Like I won 3 out of 28 barrels within
Mm-hmm.
like a period of time, and I was like trying hard not to lose my mind,
Hmm.
but like I was able to stay calm and compose and just like not go on a huge losing streak, right? Because I was trying to find opportunities where like, okay, just because I lost the die roll 25 times doesn't mean all these games are unwinnable, right? I can still try to find win conditions in these games.
Right.
So just like saving as many winning games as you can is really important. Because if you're winning all the games that you're supposed to win, and then outplaying your opponent to win the games you're supposed to lose, that's how you get above like 50% as for your win rate, which is like it's simple, but it's just hard to do, right? Like the advice sounds so simple, but that's really, I think, all you have to do.
Right. Yeah. That seems. It seems in a way similar to TCG events where like a lot of people will lose and then blame variants that may or may not have even been there, but then they are just it's round 7 and they can't let go what happened round 2 because they should have won. And like round 2 is gone. Like you'll never get that round 2 back ever. Master Duel's a little different though because you have 45 minutes of time and like more like oftentimes more than that even in between, like oftentimes the rounds are double the time in the TCG and you have people around you. I mean, I'm sure you might be in Discord and have people around you still in Master Duel, but Master Duel games are they happen right now and right now and right now. Same thing with playing DB, right? Like you just immediately can just queue back in. So that's definitely I could see being like a bigger thing where it's you're tilted this second and then you still kind of want to continue to queue. You know, you might take a little bit of a break, but that's definitely
One,
a
yeah,
valuable tip.
one thing I think is really important is you have to have a bad memory. Like if you misplay and throw a game, you have to forget it happened. Like literally, just the game didn't happen. Like out the window, or like even within one game, if you misplay and you need to still try to win that game, like just forget you misplayed, pretend you got dropped into this game or whatever. You can't feel like anger or like annoyance or like disappointment or shame at yourself for misplaying. You have to just forget it happened and try to win still, right? And it's something that I kind of I wasn't so good at it at first. I think it's more something I picked up like playing through the cups and improving as a
Mm-hmm.
master duel player. But yeah, that's there's not really any secret uh any secret trick. It's more just simple stuff like that. You have to stay calm, try to play well.
It's interesting. Well, I hope that everybody can take that advice. I know, like it's like you said, like it sounds simple, but there's a reason people talk about it is because it's doesn't seem to be simple for people to do because that's clearly something that you probably task and some of the other people who are really good at Master Duel are good at is you know it's kind of just letting it go and letting it be what it is because you'll never get those games back, right? You'll never get any games back you've
Mm-hmm.
ever played, right? You may play those people again, but those games have happened,
Yeah,
right? The
yeah.
moves have been played, you know, so that's definitely a huge one. And yeah, I appreciate your input on that, man, because I was crazy when I've seen that. I was like, that's just nuts. Like, you didn't even need to play the second one. That was the thing. You were just like, "Yeah, I'll just play it and won again. Like, sure, that was, or you got to be competitive and like, I have wanted to win, but that's
Oh
insane
yeah,
that you won twice.
you have to have like a lot of willpower.
Yeah, that's a grind, and I'm glad that I asked that because I don't really play Master Duel myself, but I have thought about wanting to do those, and I definitely would have taken a poor approach with that. Like initially, what comes to mind is like I'll just try. Like I've done 52-hour streams, played 106 matches on Dueling Book, like just grinding and grinding and grinding, just queued the entire time.
uh,
But
you must sleep. Like if you someone stayed up for 72 hours, their chances of winning are like probably zero. You have to sleep because you can't play well when you're sleep deprived.
yeah, I had noticed that at the end of like playing DB, and I'm sure it's even worse probably with Master Duel because you're only playing against like the best of the best every time. Where like every once in a while get somebody. Although it's fifth rated on DB, so it was like some of the people were mostly decent, but I'm sure it's even worse on Master Duel. And there's a stake, right? I was just playing for like a stream thing to do. You know, it's like that's got to be it's going to be a bigger thing, and I thought that would be like a good strategy. So I'm glad I brought that up because that would be very disappointing if I stayed up for the entire time and then got crushed. Got crushed when I could have just played it a little bit smarter and slept and ate and all that good stuff. So
Yeah.
that
One thing I will say I really love about Master Duel, it feels like the Duelist Cup. Like for YCS, you can be like the best player in the room, but you
mhm.
only have such a high chance of winning. But for a Duelist Cup, it truly feels like because you have a huge sample size of like hundreds of games, like if you can't win, then it means you did something wrong, probably. Because like maybe there's some level of human perfection where it is luck if two people are perfect, but nobody can be perfect over 3 days. So it's kind of just whoever's the closest to perfect. And it really doesn't feel like it's something that's luck dependent. Like if I do, we're like doing this like recording like on the
Mhm.
Thursday before the DC Cup, so it'll start in like 5 hours. But like if this weekend if I don't do well,
Mhm.
then like I know that it'll be like on me. Right? Then I'll have to try to improve, get back into shape so I can do better next time. And that's
Mhm.
really all there is to it. Whereas you cannot win a YCS and like you can't be you can't really necessarily blame yourself for not winning, right? Like sometimes it's just not your day. But I do like how the sample size of the Duelist Cup is, I think, healthier for that. And like I know some people probably disagree or think that I'm kind of just like being arrogant, but I mean it's like there's been like what seven or eight of these events recently,
Mhm.
and they've been won by three people in the world. Like it's kind of not really something that would statistically be possible if there was luck.
Right, yeah, I totally agree. It's very clearly seems to be that's one of the things I do really like the idea of those with is that it's clearly the best players are consistently winning them. It's nobody's just getting lucky and just happening to win 300 games of Master Duel or whatever it may be. You know, if it's 70 games or like that's not random. That doesn't just happen to happen,
Mhm.
right? Like you won twice in a row. That's incredible. Out of every person in the world, you won twice in a
Yeah, I
row.
mean, if there was variance, that just shouldn't be possible. And then there's Tazku, who's won 5 times. Like that has to be like 1 in a trillion if it's luck, right? So
Right, that's like yeah, out of how many Duelist Cups there's even been, right? That's yeah, that's actually insane. I know he's been regarded as one of the best Master
mhm.
Duel players, definitely in the world.
He's
So
for sure the goat. Yeah.
yeah, that's crazy. I definitely, honestly, I wish I played more Master Duel because that like low key talking
You can
about it
always
hypes
get
me up
into
and
it.
makes me wish I wish I was like playing this weekend. I know I don't have a deck or anything. I'd have to like play. I'd have to play it more. I did play it at the first couple seasons. It just it does sound really enticing because I love the idea of like something you can just work really hard and then your chances of doing well are increased, right? It's just like you put in a ton of time and effort
Mhm.
beforehand and then you could play a million games, right? There is not like sometimes there's variants of YCSs where you go X2 and you still just don't top, right? That's really
Yeah.
unfortunate. You
Like
know, it's
your fate is just much more in your hands than it is with the TCG, I think.
right, and that's huge, especially to go to the world championships, right? That's like every
Hmm.
Yu-Gi-Oh player's goal and aspiration. Maybe not every, but a mass majority of the people's goals and aspirations in total in Yu-Gi-Oh tend to be going to the world championship. So
Hmm.
that's really cool. I'm definitely it's definitely awesome. It's definitely something that hopefully I can do in the future, and I definitely hope that you win this weekend. I hope you win all of the ones that you
Okay.
play. I'll be pulling for you, obviously. Again, next year around the World Championships, and I know I'll definitely see you before then. At least I have to imagine. And
Probably like at a regional or something. Maybe. Who knows?
yeah, so speaking of, is there anything that you plan on going to in 2025 TCG wise?
I'll go to Vegas because it's the Team YCS, and those are always sick. But uh, not planning to go to Orlando or any of the normal YCSs or anything now.
That's exciting. Do you know who you're playing with, or is that information concealed? It's okay if it's concealed still.
I think it's fine. I'll be playing with my friends Enzo and Joey.
Oh, that's
It'll be fun.
exciting. Yeah, hell yeah. Well, see you there then. I'm super
Yeah, sounds good.
I'm super excited for that one. That's the team YCS are super fun. I've only got to go to one of I actually have a 3v3 like a local this weekend with
Oh, that's sick.
the top 16 prizing those what is it, the picture frames, you know what I'm talking about? They have like the
Oh,
card
like
spots in them.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the card shop has them for the winning team. So I was like, yeah, it's a local shop. It's like 10 minutes away. So I was like, all right, that's cool. Rip that this weekend. It's definitely nothing like a YCS though. A YCS 3v3 hits different. It definitely is super fun sitting next to your friends the entire time and getting to
Hmm.
talk to them, and it's definitely really exciting. So I know you have the Duelist Cup in just 5 hours, so I will bang out the last couple questions. I don't want to waste too much of your time. Like I said, I always really appreciate you doing, especially right before you have the Duelist Cup.
Oh no, it's
So
not. It's not like that. I'm happy to talk.
So what kind of advice, and these may be similar, but I wanted to ask a little bit separately. Like, what kind of advice would you give for like a newer Yu-Gi-Oh player versus what kind of advice you would give for somebody who is already at least like pretty good at the game, but is looking to kind of level up and hit the next level. I know you've talked a lot about Dueling Book, and that's definitely something that like I've always preached. Like you can just play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh on Dueling Book, but what other is there any kind of like little things that you would separate between like a newer player and somebody who's already pretty good at Yu-Gi-Oh outside of like playing Dueling Book that could help people get to the next level no matter where they're at?
I think for the most part, the advice that I would give to someone is mostly the same. Like, I think you're kind of doing most of the same things, just like progressively as you become a better player. Uh, like the things I would say are like, you need to obviously make sure you're having fun. Uh, the thing I said earlier about like setting realistic goals and like finding a balance where you personally feel fulfilled with like whatever your relationship to the game is, whatever your goals are. I think that's really important and something that like I guess when you ask people this question, I don't think is said as often as it should be. That you have to, kind of like the real life aspect of you have to settle for whatever you're happy with, and it's always like a balance between that and other things. One thing that I think applies to newer players, but less so, like less so if you're trying to be competitive, it's much more important. You need to have accountability. Like you were saying, actually, like when if you lose a round in the TCG, it's rarely you think, "Oh, I bricked." You
Mm-hmm.
should probably be like trying to think of it in a different way because it's
Mm-hmm.
more likely the case that you maybe made a mistake during the game, like major or minor, or like maybe a deck building decision or
Yep.
something like that. Anything that can affect your tournament. Uh, One thing that actually I heard like a long time ago that stuck with me. Even if you think like you didn't do anything wrong, sometimes it's more productive to just assume that there is something you could have changed because it's going to be even if it's not necessarily true, it has like a better it can have a better impact on how you're going to move on going forward. It's more healthy
Mm-hmm.
for your growth. I will say that you have to take that in moderation, though. Like I'm not saying to blame yourself for every loss because sometimes you do just brick twice and lose or brick once and lose.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have like all things in moderation. But that can be something that's kind of a mindset that I've adopted at times and found to be helpful. But I'm not saying you have to think like that. It just depends on, I guess, however your personality, how you feel like you can improve best, what works, like telling yourself. But yeah, it's really just you got to put in the time, and it can take a lot of time to improve. So it should just be more about having fun or like hanging out at locals, and it'll just happen with time. Obviously, if you want to improve faster, there's stuff like coaching, or you can just be like trying to actively improve, which is also something that's okay, right? It all just depends on what your goals are. If you're trying to have fun at locals or win a YCS.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, I love that about the accountability. That's definitely it's definitely like one of my absolute favorite things. Like just never and like you said, like everybody's goals are different. And honestly, that has been something for myself that has taken a long time to kind of come to the realization that like everybody's not in it for the same thing. Like even though my goals are like I want to succeed and I want to do all of these things in the game and I want to win this and I want to do this and that, right? It's that's not everybody's goal. Like a lot of people are just there to see friends and to have a good time and have a reason to travel and that's also is okay, you know. So for anybody watching that is what you want, then that's definitely perfectly fine, right? Everybody doesn't need to be competitive. You know, I've to people constantly in my chat who are like, you know, I'd love to try this deck, but I, you know, live by myself and I live hours away from family and I'd rather go take a trip and
yeah,
see my family. And I totally understand and respect that. And nobody should, you shouldn't feel like you need to buy Fuvaros if that's going to be hindering to what's going to make you happier, right? That's definitely something that's a big deal. And if what your goal is to be accountable, then I totally agree with the or to be great at the game. Then I do think that the accountability is just like the biggest thing. Is like if even if you happen to have bricked twice, you didn't lose twice because you bricked twice. If you bricked 4 games that your hand actually didn't play Yu-Gi-Oh, then like that was a deck building issue, like you said. Like that doesn't that's the variance I feel like is not
I, I don't know.
likely
It's
with
like
that.
it's kind of just life, right? Like you can even if your deck list is perfect, you can pick 4 times. Uh, but at the end of the day, it's just like the baseline is just if you're having fun, then it's okay. And it's okay to have your goals change as well, right? Like
Hmm.
maybe there was a time where I wanted to top a regional, win a regional, top a YCS, win a YCS, right? Like they can evolve and change. They can also kind of like go backwards. Like there have been times like probably right now my competitive drive for the TCG is pretty low compared to what it's been in the past, just because I find I'm happier like with a lower level of involvement, right?
Hmm.
Like doing other things, focusing on school, stuff like that. And then maybe in the future I'll feel like I want to play more again. But it's just whatever you consciously decide that you're happy with. I think that's really important.
Yeah, that is definitely. I respect that honestly. That really is a great answer. That so like, as long as people are happy, that really is the main thing, right? Because this is a hobby, right? You are doing it for fun, and it's if you're not enjoying the time, then that's definitely something to consider for sure. Is that
Yeah.
like why is
That's
it
why
that
I'd
I'm
say
not
like
having fun?
that's why I'd say like if you're just trying to play casually, it's not really as important to be accountable. Like if you're just trying to have a good time at locals, it's harmless to think like maybe you lose a match, but you made a mistake, you lost a match, but you're still like a little frustrated. That's natural. It's fine, and there's no need for you to like really in depth analyze your game or like be harsh on yourself. Try to have that level of accountability. If where you want to be in the game is just having a good time, right? It's not something that you really
Hmm.
need to do. It might make it less enjoyable for you if you're like trying to analyze every little thing. So, it's like it's fine if you want to do whatever, pretty much.
Yeah, for sure. You know, who's a good example of that? Jeff Leonard. Jeff Leonard's the best
Yeah,
vibiest
yeah.
person, right? Like he brought like that Exodia deck, and like how cool was that when he was on stream? He won with that Exodia deck. Like that was awesome, right? Like that definitely made his tournament experience, and that made the tournament experience of a lot of other people to see that. So that's like that kind of thing, right? He was like super happy with that. It was, he may not have been like, I need to take first place, or I'm not going to be happy with this, right? Those kind of moments are
Mhm. I
are
mean, I
awesome
can't
with it.
speak for him, but like maybe his goal isn't even to top the YCS. Maybe his goal is just to have a good time or like to have the guy who dresses up as like a sushi chef and
Yeah,
plays
yeah, he
sushi
was on
at
the last
events.
YCS. Yep.
Like, obviously, like I'm just speculating, but I doubt his goal is to win a YCS when he does that. He's probably just trying to have a good time, make some
Hmm.
memories for himself and others, right, and have fun doing his cosplay thing, and that's great, right?
Right. He
There's no need
definitely
to
takes
try to
pictures
win.
at events and stuff. Like that's cool. Like that's a
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
different experience for him, right? He's like definitely like he's not, to my understanding, he's not like even he's not a Yugi tuber or anything. And he
I think
shows.
he has a like maybe a podcast with friends for sure. I've seen that.
Does he? Well, if he
Yeah.
does, I'll drop it below since I just said he didn't have a YouTube channel. But he he's definitely seems like he's really happy with the game, and he's happy with I'm sure he would love to top, but that's if that's not his goal, like you said, it's just speculation. I don't know what his goals are. You don't know what his goals are, but
Yeah.
it seems
Like.
like he has a good time regardless of what the situation is,
Mhm.
and he facilitates other people around him having a good time, which there's a lot of merit to that, right?
Yeah, that's great. That's like equally as valid, if not more valid, than trying to win an event.
Right. So I have one last question. This one is less Yu-Gi-Oh, but super interesting in my opinion. I think is what are, and it's okay if it's personal and you don't want to answer, but what are some of your goals outside of Yu-Gi-Oh? I know you're super accomplished. You're going to school, and do you have any kind of goals that you're working at outside of Yu-Gi-Oh that are um,
Mhm.
you're looking for the future. Any other games that you play or any kind of careers you're looking to do or anything like that.
Uh, Honestly, I like. It's not that I'm not answering because like I feel like I don't want to disclose that. I'm honestly just not sure. I'm just trying to do my best, I guess. Like figure out what I want to do. That's about it.
That's fair. Well, it seems like you're doing a great job as it is, and yeah, multiple time world champion. I know you don't want to count the Dragon Duel as much, but it surely counts. It was the World Championships. You took first place, so that was a huge thing. And like I said, I appreciate you so much for doing this. It really means a lot. I was super happy to have you as a second guest. You were the first and only person I hit up as a second guest. I know you said you would do it. It's you were busy with school, and it was really cool to get you on and be able to talk for a while. And I'm excited to see you in the future. So thank you again so much.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
And
Do you have any idea? As a question for you, do you have any idea who's going to be the third guest?
that's a good question. That's a good question. You know what? Everybody in the comment section below, drop who you guys would like to see as the third guest, and I'll try to make it happen. It's definitely. I don't think anybody's completely off the table. Yu-Gi-Oh characters, please. People in the Yu-Gi-Oh community that I can, that I can actually get onto the podcast. It's not going to be Joe Rogan. So that is a great question. So everybody drop that below in the comment section who you guys want to see for the third guest. And we'll see you.